It is Sleiman and Sal. It's episode 5, season 2. We talk round 8 and the Brisbane Broncos. Sleiman, how you going?
Not too bad. How you been this week?
This week's been good. It's been nice weather out there. Well, today. And I'm pretty excited about tonight's podcast. We've got some special guests. I'll let you introduce the first guest.
Well, we've been crying for him for the last couple of weeks. He's been hiding better than Osama bin Laden in the 2000s. For every reason he's got every reason to be hiding. The Broncos, his team, his beloved team, may I add, have been disappointing him, and I can't feel better inside after sitting through so many heartache Bulldog Bronco games with this person. And it is Elie and Kamal.
How you going, boys?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for having
good.
me on.
Eli, tell us how you became a Broncos fan.
Well, I actually became a Broncos fan when I was a kid. I'd say in the mid-90s. I wouldn't say early on in the 90s. It was probably, I'd say like after they won those 2 premierships, I would say. Because I started to love watching Big Dell play, Wendell Sailor. So I was a huge fan of Wendell Sailor. Every time I watched the Broncos and, Big Dell was playing, I had the TV on, I was excited. And that's how I became a Broncos fan pretty much.
Sweet. And so you've been a Broncos fan this whole time, which is, and I see that you are quite passionate about it. I mean, we've got a WhatsApp group, and this year's been obviously hurtful. Kamal, we've got another special guest, Kamal, who lives in Brisbane. Kamal, welcome to Sleiman and Sal.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And so tell us about your history. I mean, you've born and bred in Brisbane, is that correct?
And born and bred Mater Hospital, about 5 minutes away from the Broncos Stadium.
There you go. Good.
About 10 minutes away back then.
Is that a fun fact?
It is a fun fact, yeah. Closer than most of the players, probably. Half of them are Kiwis and New Zealanders now in New South Welshmen.
Yeah, so
not many Brisbane-born players.
No, I mean the juniors.
But I started watching the 2000s. I think my first memory of any Broncos game is the actual 2000 grand final when we beat the Roosters. Back-to-back premiers. So it's quite the fall from grace.
On that note, Jamie.
What a segue.
Jamie, welcome back. I mean, you're starting to become a megastar on this show.
Yeah, the fans are calling out for quality, so here I am, boys.
Jamie,
Thanks for joining.
With me, my kids' commentary is the key, I think. So.
Yeah, we're getting some good feedback. Just before we get to Sleiman, Kamal, who was your favourite player in the 2000s?
Wendell Sailor.
Oh, there you go.
Double
Wendell. I loved watching him.
Quality,
yes.
Jamie, before we go on to some more pressing, because we can't do 3 weeks in a row about the Roosters leading the headlines. Your thoughts on Radley and Verrills going down?
I think I texted Eli or the group during the week, and I woke up the next day legit upset that this kid's going to miss out the rest of the year. Not so much for the team's sake, but he's a big heart.
And we're losing Jamie.
We've got some technical difficulties for the first time.
I think we're gone. Wow. Am I back?
You're back.
You're back now. Go on. So you woke up the next morning.
Right. I woke up the next morning. I was legit upset that if we go on,
it's not.
Oh, this kid's going to miss out on something part of it.
I think you're just sorry, Jamie. You cut out again, but I think you're trying to basically say that you felt bad for the Radley and Verrills because they're probably going to miss out on something that. Like it's going to be a crazy year, and they could very well do a three-peat, and they'll definitely miss out on that opportunity to try to do that.
Yeah, definitely, and it leaves us really thin in the 9, so that's a big worry for us. If something happens to Jake Friend, we're in big trouble.
Who takes his spot if Jake Friend does go down?
Well, I saw a guy named Lussick, which I think is Darcy Lussick's brother that used to play for Manly.
Yeah, he's our like third stringer. Like, I think Sam Walker's, they don't want to put him at 9 and burn him out. Like, they've got big hopes for Sam Walker. Lockie Lamb's there. I think Lockie Lamb might be even a backup. So we'll see how we go. But Jake Friend can play 80 on his head. So
Freddie Lussick, that's his name. I'm pretty sure he's a hooker. I'll have a quick.
Yeah, he's our third stringer.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, if he's got any fire, if it is the Lussick brother that I'm thinking of, if he's got any fire like Darcy, he should go right.
I haven't seen him run around yet, but yeah, I do know that we've got a couple young halves that under the pump could play it. It'd be interesting to see where Robertson goes with this, because he's known to tinker with his lineup until he can find out exactly what blokes are made of. So we'll see what happens.
All right, that's enough Roosters talk from you tonight. We're going to lead with what, it's insane. It's you can't really see it there because it's getting the crisis alert. The Broncos, they lost the game against the Titans, where I think a lot of the media is now starting to question Anthony Seibold as a coach. Eli, I'll start with you. I'll let you do all the talking, and Kamal, because you guys, you bleed the Broncos. How do you like? This is probably one of the worst losing streaks that I've seen since maybe early in the 2000, like in 1999, when you were trying to go back into you just scraped into the top 8, but you were just playing poorly. But I've never seen the Broncos like this.
Yeah, well, the club's been around for about 32 years. So, and I reckon this point on in the history of the club has got to be the darkest period ever, like that I've ever experienced anyway. Like I've never seen the Broncos under that much, scrutiny and pressure. Because they're expected to always, play well and always, be a top 4 side. So, I don't know. For me personally, it's a dark time, and I don't know how we're going to get ourselves out of it.
Well, Kamal, how do you see the Broncos getting out of this?
Different coach. That'll be the first way.
But do you think that's wise? I know he's not coaching well, but he's in. I think he signed a 5-year deal, and this is only his second year on a finance, paying out a coach for 3.5 seasons. Do you think that's wise?
The accountants won't be happy, but the fans will be.
And obviously, I'm the accountant that's worrying about the payout.
It'll be very, very expensive. It's a 5-year contract with supposedly a 6th-year option in his favour. So it's really a 6-year contract.
Yeah, it's a monster contract.
Because it's an option in his favour, not in the club's favour.
Well,
why did they do that?
Because they're idiots.
They banked on him.
Well,
they went bank and they thought maybe South were going to give a bigger deal.
He had that tremendous year at the Bunnies, where I think the Bunnies weren't really looking like being a top 8 team, and they just came out of nowhere and played really, really well underneath him. Kamal, you say get rid of the coach. Who would you like to be the coach?
If I was in charge for a day, it would be Walters head coach with Kearney assistant coach. That's who I'd install immediately. Jamie,
you might have to touch on this, or Sal. I don't understand the hype on Kearney as a coach. I think everywhere he's gone, he went to the Eels and he did poorly. He went to the Warriors, and let's be honest, as much as it was such a bad way of him leaving the Warriors, especially during these times, he hadn't done anything special. I know all the players talk him up and all that, but the results don't show.
Well, Kamal touched base on it a bit earlier, where there are a few Kiwi boys in the side. Does that help in terms of people management, Jamie? Do you think that Kearney can add that one-on-one element that perhaps Seibold is not connecting with the players, and then Kevy can do the top-notch coaching?
I definitely think Walters is definitely the best option, the way the league's being played at the moment, like in terms of style. Kearney's never really been a technical coach, so it's a bit of a worry that they want to put him in there to guide these young guys where he hasn't done it with Roger. He couldn't do it with Sean Johnson. He had 43% at Parramatta. So he hasn't got a record that just speaks that we have to get him here. Like there's other assistant coaches that I'd be looking to bring in that could offer exactly the same value. But definitely.
But do you think he adds that one-on-one people management? Because when I watched NRL 360 last night, I forgot what someone mentioned that he's got this ability to connect one-on-one with the players, and we all know that when he left, they were quite devastated.
No one's saying he's not a likable bloke. Like when he was playing, he was always one of the leaders of the group. He's got a real good man management side of him, but he couldn't.
And do the Broncos need that, Jamie? Do the Broncos need that?
I honestly think they need someone to set a standard and say, "Here's the line, toe it. If you can't do it, there's the door. If you can't meet the expectations of these club legends that have done it before you, there's the door." These guys have a whole city to themselves. They walk around like they've won shit, and they haven't done it for, 13, 14 seasons now. Talis touched on it 2 years ago that they're walking around town with, like a chip on the shoulder, like they're the king shit. But to be honest, they're only competing with the Queensland Reds, and they're dog shit at the moment too. Like, what have they got to be so egotistical about? Like there's a real arrogance about these young kids that the older crew don't like at all. And I think Kearney was there before and it was smooth sailing, but he was there when Bennett was there. Let's be honest, Bennett was doing the man managing. Kearney was the water boy. All the Kiwi boys joke about it in the chats.
So I want to bring a reference. So that's the thing where Kearney might have his limitations where he's a people's coach. He's like the player coach, where in any type of sport, that can only lead you so far. The classic example that I'll use, and it's a basketball comparison, and Eli will know this because we're both NBA nuts, is Mark Jackson used to be the coach of the Golden State Warriors for a number of years. And he helped the Warriors rebuild, but they struggled to get to that next level. Then when it came to, and Mark Jackson lost his job because they were making the playoffs, but they couldn't push through these other teams. They brought in Steve Kerr, who was more, he was a players coach, but not as much as Mark Jackson, because all the players were upset that Mark Jackson left. But he was more technical. He had more expertise on that Wayne Bennett feel. And he led them to from out of nowhere into a championship. And now they're a strong, one of the strongest teams in the West, barring this year because of injuries. So, Eli, if you had your choice in coach, do you think Kevin Walters is that person? Or do you need someone that's more like a technical type of coach, the person that is going to basically ruffle some feathers?
Look, I think I said earlier on in the week that we might need a coach, that doesn't take any BS, that just goes out there and, he demands of his players. But at the same time, I think personally the problem isn't Seibold. I think he goes beyond Seibold. I think it's the playing group itself. I think there's, there has to be some issues behind, but that we don't know about, or something that we haven't heard of. And if we're going back to Stephen Kearney, actually, there was a report this afternoon. I think he spoke to Paul Kent, and Paul Kent said that he wasn't interested.
Okay.
So he wasn't interested to go back, and he doesn't know where he heard that from. I think it was only a suggestion from the board itself.
Has he signed with the Broncos?
No, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't.
Paul Kent said yesterday that he asked Seibold, would you be happy with Kearney as your assistant? And Seibold said, I would not shut down that idea.
Yeah, well, and the issue with... sorry, Sleaze. Yeah.
No, you go on, Eli.
The issue with bringing in, any other coach at this stage who isn't around the area is they're not allowed inside the player bubble. So what are they going to do, They can't coach them on the outside. They're going to have to go into a quarantine anyway if they were to come in. So, that's another 2 weeks. So what are they going to do? They can't really do that.
Yeah.
So Elie, you did mention the players. So you've moved away from Seaboard and you're focusing on the players. You look at the starting lineup today. What would you do different? And so what would you do different in order to get this club to go back to where it should be? Do you think, if you look at the starting lineup?
One of the things that I think might answer Eli's question, and because I asked Elie to do the play teams that played well and didn't play well. Elie had the player that disappointed as Anthony Milford. Elie, how much longer does himself and Darius Boyd stay in this lineup?
Look, the thing with Anthony Milford is he doesn't even know himself what he's doing on the field. Like on the weekend, I think he had something like 7 or 8 runs of a ball, but every time he had the ball, he looked lost. He's over trying. He's not really doing things that's helping the attack at the moment. On the 4th or 5th option, he's always taking that spiral kick, but it's not really effective anymore. It's too predictable as well. And even in defence, he's missing so many tackles. It's bad. I don't know.
Well, I just wanted to... So you're saying that Anthony Milford's missing tackles, and I'm going to pass this on to Kamal. There's all this hype about Tom Dearden. I didn't think he was that impressive last season, but granted, he played a handful of games. He's a young kid. Would you play Dearden in halfback and move Croft to 5'8", Kamal, and maybe push Milford at fullback so that A, you hide him in defense, and B, he can just stick to the old Milford. I'm talking about the Canberra Raiders Milford that didn't have to worry about structure, setting up plays. You've got Croft and Dearden to do that. All he has to do is just running the ball or utilising his outside backs. Do you think he could maybe he should be shifting to fullback, Kamal?
I don't think he has the fitness for it anymore. We saw that last year. He did switch to fullback. I don't think he was any good. He couldn't even get 100 run meters a game over many games. I think Milford, his main issue at the moment, I think the whole side's main issue is it's not the actual halves, it's the forwards. We've got a massively overhyped forward pack that are pretty shit. They get smashed in the ruck every single week, and you could put anyone, you could put Cronk in that team and we'd still look rubbish because we'd make no meters. We spend the entire game in our own half and we have no concept of how to manage the ruck. We get penalised. We just don't know how to manage the ruck.
I find
we're
that
never
hard.
on the front foot.
I find that hard that you guys aren't winning the forward battles when you've got Payne Haas, who's a machine. You've got Matt Lodge, your other front row enforcer. Flegler, hopefully I pronounced his name right.
Flegler, American accent? Flegler?
I don't know. And I think a player that you're missing.
Pangai Junior.
Well, see, Pangai Junior, I don't see the hype about him. He does some big hits, but he doesn't really do the hard yards. He's not taking the ball.
He's amazing one game in 6. That's about Pangai for you. The
player that you're missing the most is David Fifita on the fringes. If you think of the first 2 games this year, he was torturing the teams.
He's really, really, really good. Our issue is, I think, honestly, is that Haas is carrying the forward pack and the rest are overrated. Flegler's really good, but he gives away 4 or 5 penalties or errors, multiple errors every game. He costs the team a lot. Then you've got Lodge, who was good, but after the knee injury, he's been a bit soft. And then who else we have? Carrigan, very good. I rate him very, very highly. Fifita's amazing, but Glenn really shouldn't be in first grade, but he's our captain. And then who's our other back rowers?
You got Glenn and Boyd and...
Glenn and Boyd should be out of first grade. Glenn, not so much. I don't mind him because he tries so hard. He tries really, really good. He's our best effort player in the team. So you can't drop him for that reason. Because his example is what everyone else should be doing.
The recent
Boyd should be gone 2 years ago. Boyd should be gone. He should never be in first grade.
And I think he's hurting you guys, especially if you look at that Brisbane versus Manly game where Brisbane played really well. they got back into it because the centers were rushing in. Like Boyd is just a turnstile in defense. He it's not so much that he's soft. It's just his positioning. He hasn't played center ever.
I think
career.
he definitely tries to avoid contact. I think he takes the weak option 9 times out of 10. So I think he lost his passion for the game 2 years ago.
So then, Jamie, the other player that I want to touch base on, because it's a peculiar signing. I know they need some leadership, but Ben Teo, I know he scored a try on the weekend, but it's not the Ben Teo from the South Sydney Grand Final, Jamie. It's the Ben Teo. It's a 34-year-old or 33-year-old Ben Teo. He's
33 at the moment.
He's lost his touch. When I say his touch, he's lost his spark.
He's lost his explosiveness. I watched him closely the last 2 games. Mind you, he's coming back from a game that doesn't necessarily rely on that aspect. But when he left, I remember that game against the Roosters. He knocked us out of the comp that year on his own. Like, he was just deadly. That's 7 years ago. So that's a long time in an athlete's life. But I watched him, and he looks a bit heavier. He's been playing inside, outside centre for Union. You can get away with a lot of, lackluster efforts, but in tight, he just doesn't have that X factor, doesn't have that explosiveness like you just touched on. And to be honest, that was really soft defence from Titans, where they shouldn't have let that in, but they're the Titans. They don't have 80 minutes of quality in them, so they're going to let tries in eventually. Leadership, that's one thing. Josh Maguire, I scratched my head when I heard he was leaving. Like, that was one guy I would have kept for another 2-3 years personally. Like biggest grub in the world, but you love playing with him because. And he
still had something in the tank.
Well, you listen to what he said when the Cowboys. I wrote the Cowboys off last week on the podcast, thinking no Val, Tom Loller's injured. They've got nothing. I watched the highlights package, and what he came out with during the week was saying we're the ones responsible. Don't blame Green. It's us. We're the ones playing subpar. And he went out and backed it up. You don't have that at the Broncos at the moment. So
that's the leadership, and that's the leadership that you're talking about. He ran 164 meters, and he matched Clemmer in the meters.
Yeah, and then you look at
37 tackles.
I'm looking over the stats for the halves. I think Milford's got 1 try assist, no line break assists. Same thing for Croft. Croft's got 1 try that he scored in the first round back. You're really looking for guys that break open the game and play off the back of momentum. But as the boys both touched on, forwards aren't doing their job. They're looking for the fancy stuff. The backs aren't doing their job because, there's no cohesion. They just look like everyone's confused, man.
Well, I want to lead to another. I know we touched base coaches before, and a former coach of theirs has come out in the media. Sal, Wayne Bennett, he's taken a swipe. Is it a swipe? I think he's taken a swipe.
Yeah,
Sydney Morning Herald put an article up about it.
Yeah, so we all know Wayne Bennett likes to keep his mouth shut. He actually came out earlier today and he said, "I've had my mouth shut since I've left the club 18 months ago, but I will not sit back and cop or tolerate the blame on him." He's said that they're trying to lay responsibility on his feet for their poor decisions. He came out and he pretty much just said that, South Sydney win the preliminary final when Seabold left. He was a young coach. No one made him leave when he did because he had promised to coach the Broncos in 2019, and they didn't need a new coach until 2020. Wayne Bennett said that he was very happy with the team that he was going to coach in 2019, and if he wanted out, then he had the opportunity to get out. He then, and Jamie touched base on it, since Bennett's departure, they've lost Gillett, Maguire, McCulloch, Nikorima, Opacek, Roberts, Shabaski, Sims, Sewer, and Thaiday. Thaiday retired. Bennett has also hit out that, and Roberts, and it was Paul White, Darren Lockyer, and Peter Nolan that were in charge. Now, he said that in the case of Darius Boyd, he said it was all Paul White. And most of the times he didn't know what players were getting. he was only given a rounded figure to what the managers were asking for. And he also made an interesting comment that Seabold's manager, Isaac Moses, had 15 contract players at the Broncos. So he's pretty much saying, I was happy with the side that was there. Don't put the blame on me. I'll go to Eli on this. Eli, when you found out that Wayne Bennett was leaving and Seabold was coming through, were you happy with that decision?
No.
What are your thoughts on Bennett's comments?
No, because I've always thought that Wayne Bennett has been like the master coach. Like he is the main reason that the Broncos have been successful throughout that whole period. He's won championship 6 times. He's been to 7, I think, with the Broncos. They lost in 2015, but when I found out that he was actually on his way out, I was like, here we go again. Because the same thing happened before with I think it was Henjak.
It was Henjak, yeah.
Yeah, and then we all know that story.
Eli, just to quickly jump in, if Wayne Bennett stayed, would it have been likely that James Demetriou would have taken over?
Well, that was meant to be the successor.
Yeah.
And would you have been happy with that?
So that was the plan. Like I've seen what is done, in the lower grades, and I was happy to have him on. Like I didn't have an issue with him, being the successor at all. So
and
Kamal, what do you had in place? So
yeah. And Kamal, what are your thoughts in the same question I asked Eli about Seabold leaving during that coming in that year and when Bennett leaving?
Should never have got rid of Bennett the way they did. Bennett had 1 year left on his contract, and there was no world in where sacking Bennett a year early was necessary. We had a 64% win rate under him, which is second highest in the competition over the 4-year period where he coached us in his return. And Seabold was a very promising coach, but his record in the lower grades was shit. He's never won, I think, any premiership in any grade. And his winning percentage in the lower grades, I believe, is pretty poor, like under 50%. Jason Demetriou, for example, has an amazing record in the lower grades, has won multiple premierships in multiple grades. Very, very promising record. And then Seabold was only 1 year at the time, so if they just waited 1 more year, Bennett had another year to coach. He was never an Ivan Henjak where he had to be pushed out the door, yesterday. You could have given him an extra year. And Seabold would have had another year in South to see what he's really made of. Because a lot of coaches can look good in the first year, but looking good in the second year is much, much more difficult. Second year syndrome, I think, is more real in coaches than it is in actual players.
Well, I think I want to touch base now onto next week's game. Against the Warriors, and there's been some key changes. And I'll touch base. Eli's team that disappointed. It was a Brisbane Broncos theme. Eli, you said the team that the team that would continue their form. You said it's going to be the Warriors or the Broncos. Now, I've once again used the loser leaves town match. I had that for the Broncos last week, but just the way that the top 8 is feeling, this is well and truly the loser leaves town. They're both on 4 points. They both have a little bit of a sniff. No Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for this match. That's a gigantic.
So has that been confirmed?
He's
1 match. Yeah.
Okay.
And whenever he got the ball last week, he just did
not
something.
Just last week, for the last 4 years at the Warriors, he just.
And so, what happens if Brisbane lose?
Seabold has to go.
Is it on Seabold or is it on the players?
Eli?
He's going to be under that much pressure that I don't think he'll have a choice. And I don't think the board's going to have a choice. Like, if you lose to a team without RTS, then, I think that's it for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Sleiman, there'll be so much pressure on Kevy that he will have no choice either. I know he's been re-signed for Queensland. The Origin's at the end of the year. He's got Michael Hagan there. Michael Hagan's still there, isn't that right, Jamie? I think.
I'm not too sure. Yeah.
I think so. That could still assist him in preparing for the you know, we all know now Brisbane won't make the finals, or likely. And so Kevin will have this period of time to prepare for Queensland. He'll have a good month. I think he'll have no choice. He'll have to go. There's no one else out there that I can think of that can take a spot, but I think you're both right. There'll be so much pressure on Seabold just to go, and he'll just probably sail him out.
But the thing is, if there's no one else to replace Seabold, if you can't get Kevin Walters and Stephen Kearney doesn't want the job, why sack the coach? If there's no one, you only sack a coach when you know who you're going to replace it with.
Yeah, exactly. And who's out there, gentlemen, aside from Kevy, that could, let's say if Kevy says no, I mean, he was just re-signed for Queensland for 2 years, I think, as of 2 days ago. It's obviously not Kearney because we all know that he can't coach.
Not a head coach.
He's not a head coach. Will there be any other options? Eli, you think you made a comment as to you would like a former player. Was that right? You made a comment on the WhatsApp the other day?
Yeah, well, I'd like to keep it, you know, like in the culture, like one of the old boys, I think, would be a good option. You know, but
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
That's the
unless
that's the question. Who puts their hand up?
Unless they got a history of coaching well, but the thing is, there's no former Broncos out there at the moment other than probably Kevin Walters that you can say, yep, I see that guy's a coach. Maybe the closest thing is a Darren Lockyer, but he's stuck in management.
Now, not Lockyer. Justin Hodges has coaching, but he's too young still.
I'm going to throw a span on the works here. Bellamy was linked to the Canterbury for a good 12 hours. We all know that Bellamy had a bit of an appetite to coach Brisbane. Jamie,
is his family still in Brisbane?
I think his daughter's on the Gold Coast. He was assistant coach there for donkey's years. Whether he's got the drive to put in another 5-10 years at another establishment is the other question. But he's the coach that I was just talking to before about putting a line in the sand and saying, this is the standard, no matter who you are, what jumper you're wearing, this is the standard. If you don't
Jamie, that's origin talk. That's Kevy.
Well Kevy's done his apprenticeship. He's done it at Melbourne. He's done it at Brisbane. He's the Queensland coach. And let's be honest, that Queensland team shouldn't have touched the New South Wales team for the last 2 years. But it was on a knife's edge. Whether that's origin or whether that's him getting the best out of those kids is another issue. But at least someone's got his...
Cut out.
Yep. He's frozen for a bit.
Kevy also did sack players
that's like a
more discipline.
Real great. Come back.
Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, well, he dropped Cam Munster, Milford.
Was it Oates as well for the night?
It was big name players, and they were big calls. It wasn't an easy thing to say they're out.
Yeah.
When he dropped Billy Slater and he got emotional about it, I remember that.
He dropped Sam Thaiday.
Big decisions.
Yeah, and that's what you want.
Well, he's got a decent style of play in him. Like he's not scared to throw the football around, but he also understands the middles have to work. So, you know, you've got probably the youngest, best prop in the game, killing it in Payne Huss, but you're going to burn him out if he keeps going the way he's going. Like, what are you going to do? You know, you've got Fafita reportedly signing 1 year deal to stave off his management. Then next year you might lose him to the Gold Coast. Look, you've got some of the best kids there, but they just all look lost.
They do. What's your thoughts on a left field option, Anthony Griffin?
That was tossed up, but he got speared by these guys, you know. So does he go back? You know, Cleary's gone back. You know, there is a...
Bennett went back.
Yeah, lots of blokes gone back.
Des Hasler went back.
Hasler went back, yeah.
That was massive.
It's possible, and I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think he's great, but I think he could rebuild the attitude in the team.
Mm.
Well, from the things I've been hearing, he's been tossed up for the Warriors job for those same attributes where he can get the best out of these kids. He knows what a premiership team looks like. He wasn't given the chance to fulfill his program because Bennett was coming back. But for more reports from Gus Gould and all these other people around him at Penrith, Penrith are where they are now because of what Hook put in place, and Cleary's just putting the finishing touches on it.
Definitely.
So he does have a history of putting a ship back on course, so it could be worse.
Even Bennett's return in 15 was by Griffin's lead-up work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, Kamal, you mentioned to me, I remember this, probably, I think it was 8 years ago, where you mentioned to me that Griffin won a premiership with the younger side, the under-20s.
They did, yep. They had a good
And
couple.
so, and Eli, do you think that links
I had a really good side too.
Yeah, do you think that links to what's happening now? You've got a younger side, and now Griffin can apply those sort of skill sets that he does with the younger ones. Would you be happy with Griffin?
I would, but you're going to have to, go out with the old and in with the new. So you're going to have to get rid of Darius Boyd, those kind of guys, If you're going to build a young squad, then you're going to have to do a whole, rebuild. That's what I think anyway.
Well, you're going to replace Darius Boyd anyway. This is his last year.
Yeah, it's his last year.
But that takes it back to the issue where they were trying to comprehend why Anthony Seibold would leave Souths, to go to a rebuild, because he keeps mentioning the word rebuild all the time.
Sleiman, I've got a quick question for you. Sorry, I've got a quick question for you, Sleiman, just very quick. If Seibold gets sacked, would you want him at Canterbury? Given that Eli just mentioned rebuild?
I don't think so. I don't think just with his track, he's in a rebuild with the Broncos and he's failing miserably. I don't think he can attract. We spoke about the Bulldogs. We're needing a coach to attract players. I don't think Seibold's going to be attracting any players. So
not after this year.
So
you look at the quality though, the quality he's got at Brisbane, he can't make it work. He goes to Canterbury and you expecting results? No way in the world.
So why did it work at Souths, Jamie?
Well, let's pick at the bones of that. You got Inglis, you got Burgess, you have Cook,
Walker, Reynolds.
Let's not forget that start of the year. They lost 3 or 4 in a row, and then they went on a run of 11 straight. And I think it was until they played the Roosters, roughly around the end of that period before the finals, where we figured out nullify the middle, Cook, and the rest of the.
Yeah, I remember Cook killed it that year. He absolutely turned it apart.
We figured them out, and then we ran on to win the premiership. But they figured out South's attack, and it was predictable. It was the same shape, left side.
Yeah,
it was very analytical.
Decoy. Yep.
It was Moneyball football. It was just play this left side percentage, and 95% of the competition bought it. But once you play the top teams at the business end of the season, it fell apart. And obviously they're older, more mature. They can take on the breakdowns of everything. But you're dealing with 20, 21. Carrigan's what? 21, 22? He's your captain. You're asking these guys to be first graders, established first graders, and then you're asking them to be football statisticians and absorb all this information and make it effective. It's not going to work. So you had older players in their prime. So was it Seibold or was it Damien Cook just flying off the handle, running up the guts? You be the judge.
I think we'll leave it at that. Hopefully, Kamal and Heavy got their venting out of the way, and hopefully they should. If they don't beat the Warriors, it's gonna be
floodgates.
Well, look at the draw now. You've got Warriors this week. I think they've got who else next week?
I think I play the Bulldogs.
You've got the Dogs after that. Yeah. You've got
Coach Lee's Town, Sleiman.
Coach Lee's Town, yeah, maybe.
They got a month of football where we'll see.
Can I just say very quietly, and Sleiman's going to move on after I say this. Broncos is second last, Canterbury's last, and it's all Broncos all over the news. And poor Canterbury's sitting there, nothing, not a peep. Dean is getting ready for this week.
So the difference is,
I know.
We didn't expect the Bulldogs to do anything this year. We expected the Broncos to be a top 8 team.
Yeah, Andrew Johns didn't come out and say the Bulldogs are going to win the comp.
No. I get that. But it's still, there is substance to putting the pressure on Pay. But anyway, Sleiman, I'll let you go.
All right, let's move forward. Eli, you're the team that impressed you. And you know what? At first, when you told me the Cowboys, I was like, what the heck? And then I thought, you know what? They were impressive because they got the upset win. Eli, what you mentioned that Paul Green was under a lot of pressure and they came out and they fired up with no Valentine Holmes.
Yeah, I thought the Cowboys were tremendous. They played a good brand of footy. I liked the way that they threw the ball around. You know, they caught the Knights off guard, and I think that the Knights felt they were caught off guard as well. You know, everyone's talking about the Knights, you know, being a special team, you know, with Coach O'Brien and all of this. But I think, you know, we saw a few flaws.
Their defense was terrible against the Cowboys, especially that first half. It was like a reversal from the previous week where the Cowboys' defense was horrible against the Tigers and they got blitzed in the first half. It was almost deja vu, but the opposite way.
Yeah, and I think, as I said to you earlier, you know, they can't use the excuse of having, you know, their star players on board, you know, Bradman Best and
they had almost a healthy team except for Bradman Best.
Yeah.
And Mitch
Barnett.
Barnett.
They were pretty solid.
Yeah, well.
They were pretty solid and they just, you know, I don't know if it wasn't their day or if the Cowboys were like spectacular, but yeah, I'm impressed with the Cowboys.
I'm liking the hooker Sleiman. Robson, I'm liking him.
You've been talking him up a lot. Now, Robson's got a tough task against the Eels. The Eels.
Oh.
Geez, what about the cliffhanger? They were winning. They were winning by 12 points. To let Canberra back into it, they had no Moses. They couldn't kick a field goal to save their lives. King Gufferson came in. This match is that they've put in Jai Field into halfback, who I think finally I like him. He's a small player. He'll get targeted in defense, but he's not going to lead them in structure. That's where Dylan Brown has to take ownership and lead the team around. But off the ball, he's got really good pace. I really
he's
hope
very quick.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Maguire and Tamalolo run at this kid, run at him, and I think that's what's going to hurt them. There'll be too much pressure on Brown, and I just think there's also Robson in the middle. I just feel the forward. Is Valentine Holmes back?
He's named on an extended bench. He might not play. So are you tipping a Cowboys upset?
I think Parramatta will lead, and then Cowboys will come through at the end. I think.
Kamal, do you agree with anything that Sal just said?
Yeah, no, I'm tipping Cowboys as well.
Wow.
I think Eels will be tired.
He's a Queenslander.
I think Eels will be tired as well. I don't think they can keep up the same standard for that long. I think they're due a loss.
Yeah, I made that comment 2 weeks ago, Simon. I just think Eels, long run, man, if Roosters had Radley, I tell you what.
Oh, enough with this, Radley. You've been moping all week about it.
Oh, at least I'm not moping about Woods.
Both of us.
Talking about Woodsy's team, the player that impressed Eli now, this is left field, but you know what? I'll give him credit. Sione Katoa, and not the Penrith hooker that went to the Bulldogs. Eli.
Not the Bulldogs one. Yeah.
No, not the Bulldogs one.
No, not him.
Funny enough, the Bulldogs
He's not even cracked the team.
Yeah. Jeremy.
Wow.
You know, just quickly before Eli talks about the Sharks, you know, Cogger impressed me at hooker for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I liked him as well when he came. I didn't mind it.
Yeah,
but Sleiman, is that because you've got Jerry Marshall King who does nothing, and then you've got Cogger moving around? I mean, Holland impressed me at hooker.
Eli, we're not talking about the Bulldogs now. We're talking about Katoa. Why was he the player that impressed you this week?
Yeah, well, so 2 weeks ago he scored a hat-trick, and last week he scored a double. And some of those tries that he scored were pretty hard to score. Like,
he was in the air,
ones,
yep.
You know, the ones, you know, diving in the corner. His handling skills, I think, on one of the tries was amazing. You know, it would be hard to take. And he caught it and, you know, just picked it up and scored. You know, to score 5 tries in
2 weeks.
in the space of 2 weeks. You know, for a side that's been, you know, sort of up and down, it's pretty good. You know, he's got them back.
There was comparisons. I think it was him. There's comparison. Oh no, that was was it Brian? Oh, it was either him or 2-0 from Penrith of Matt Utai. What Jamie? What does Katoa remind you of as a type of player?
This kid had a lot of raps coming through, so he's been a superstar in the lower grades for a while. It took him a bit to come through. Who does he remind me of? Like, he's a bit of a hybrid. Like, he's not the biggest winger, but he can get over the line quite deceptively. But
almost like a Josh Mansour, because he bounces
off
players.
Mansour, but he doesn't have that physique that Mansour does. But
yeah, that's right.
There's your answer.
Great. I think that was 500 meters. Like, saw the facilities and then backflips. I'm pretty sure I read he went and toured and then ended up signing with Cronulla after visiting the Dogs. I'm not sure.
The Bulldogs were going hard after him. That's right, and we ended up signing the other Katoa. But you know, anyway.
Although isn't that lovely? Isn't that
paperwork? Mixed up paperwork.
Eli, can the Cronulla Sharks and Katoa continue his try-scoring form against impressive Titans? I think the Titans were impressive against the Broncos. As much as we've been talking about the Broncos being poor, Eli, does the Sharks continue this?
I don't know. I can't see the Titans winning 2 in a row. So,
simple. Very simple.
Yeah.
Kamal,
I think
you're
the
laughing.
Sharks got them.
Kamal, you're laughing. Are you going to support the Queenslanders as well, the Titans?
Yeah, I will. I think Holbrook's a really good coach. I think the Titans aren't as bad as they've been made out to be.
Okay.
No, I'm going Titans as well.
Well, the Titans do have Sal's favourite player, Corey Thompson. So,
former Bulldogs.
Getting me Jack Orr on Supercoach.
when
Sleiman encouraged me to pick him up.
He played well.
It's all right.
Sal, I've told you my thoughts of Corey Thompson, and you still picked him up.
You told me to pick him up. I know you don't.
I didn't tell you to pick him up.
Yes, you did.
No.
Suggested. Yeah.
Anyway, let's fly through these other games of the round. This is the game of the round. Now it's such a shame that Cameron Munster's missing. Sal, how much of a loss is it for the Storm?
Yeah, I think it's a big loss. I mean, I get a bit excited when I see Cameron Smith go in the halves. I'm not sure if he'll do it this week. They
got Riley Jacks playing at 5'8".
Yeah, technically, Bellamy likes to use Smith around the ruck and keep him there, obviously for obvious reasons. Who's playing the fullback position?
For the Storm, Pappenhausen.
Yeah. Sorry, Pappenhausen. Sorry, Munster's at 5'8". That's right. I think it's a big loss, but I think it'll be closer than we all think.
Jamie, Roosters, they put Nat Butcher into at lock. He's a good young player that he's got a very similar physique to Radley. I don't think he'll go missing in the matches for the Roosters to come.
It's taken him a while to warm up. He's another kid that had a lot of raps. He captained the premiership team in the juniors. Almost got the juniors kicked out of the Souths comp because he was pinched from Souths. That's another story. But he's slowly developing into someone we can rely on in the middle.
How old is he, Jamie?
He's about 22, same age as Radley, about 22, 23. But he's not as big as some of the other boys in that pack. But he's starting to win the collisions, win the contact, which took him a while to get into. I think he would have played Liu as that 13 Radley ball distributor. Liu did his rib in the same game. There was talk that Taukiaho might go back into that role and Collins pushes up. That's why we recalled the kid from the Warriors. But I definitely think Munster, out of the two comparisons of who lost who, I think Munster's a bigger loss because everything comes off him now. Everything. Cam Smith, yeah, he does a little bit of string pulling, but everything that came off for the Storm was off the in and out runs of Munster. So that's a big loss for them. So I'm predicting we do them, but The score, I'm not too sure.
And Eli, for your reference, Butcher is a Southeastern Seagulls junior. Remember that team?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Moving on, we got the Tigers and the Panthers. Kamal, second versus sixth. It's not a bad matchup. The Panthers were impressive against the Bunnies. Do they continue their form?
I think they will, yeah. Panthers look really, really, really good. They're probably my main competitor to the Roosters for the premiership.
Yes.
Eli, do you... Panthers' defense has been fantastic. They are struggling to score points, I feel. Do you think maybe this might be the game that they actually let loose a little bit, or do you think the Tigers will aim up in defense?
Well, there's been a lot of talk that the Panthers are the dark horse of the comp. So, I don't know. I can't see the Panthers dropping this game. I think they've been playing pretty well. I mean, the Tigers played well last week too. But I don't know. I think the Panthers they're just going to be too strong for them.
Fair enough. We'll move to the next match, and we've got the Seagulls versus the Knights. Now, the Seagulls, after a very impressive win against Canberra, they shat the bed against the not the Raiders, the Sharks. They were just dreadful, and another team that was dreadful was the Knights. Sal, who bounces back?
I like the Knights, Sleiman. As I mentioned last week, Saifidi brothers and Clemmer. I know they didn't do too well last week. I just feel Manly, without Turbo, there's just Sully's back, which is a good thing.
He's only good for your fantasy team, but
I keep reading my mind, Sleiman, and it drives me mad. I've got a crush on the Saifidi brothers, and I think with the Pearce and Ponga, they're bound to bounce back. And I really like Adam O'Brien.
Jamie, they're coming back from playing in North Queensland, where I think they struggled with the heat, and it was an afternoon game, so it was probably even hotter.
Well, you look at their travel, how they're traveling. It's win loss, win loss, win loss. So they're due for a win. If you look at that, some of the small efforts last week, I saw Clifford ran through Clemmer, Fitzgibbon, Ponga. That just doesn't happen every week. So the team was off. I expect him to be pulled in. O'Brien's big on consistency, so I expect him to get over this week.
Elie, Kamal, no chance for the Seagulls?
No, I don't think so.
No Trebojevic?
Not without Turbo.
Yeah.
Not without Turbo.
Yeah, that's a fair call. I think it'll be a closer match than we're thinking. I don't think anyone's saying it's going to be a blowout, but we'll see how that looks. We got the Raiders and the Dragons. Now, remember the days where the Raiders were the Houdini team for the Dragons? This is when the Dragons had Wayne Bennett as coach. They were killing it. And when me and Eli's favourite Robinson twin, the Reece Robinson, would come in for Canberra and they'd win out of nowhere. And this is when the Raiders were terrible. Eli, do the Raiders finally get back into – they've lost 2 in a row. They haven't found that form that they had last year.
I think they get back into form this game. I think it's also the perfect game to get back into form against a side that isn't really that strong at the moment. And I think they should put on a few points this game as well.
Well, Sal, we watched the Dragons game and Roosters together. The Dragons weren't that bad against the Roosters. You don't think that they can lead?
Man, the Dufty at fullback, his passing game amazed me.
And his speed and his explosion as well.
And if they had Dufty at fullback for the first, 4 or 5 games, would Dragons be where they're at now? Jamie, Dufty at fullback, I'm not sure if you obviously did watch the game.
I've watched him a couple of times this year, and I actually scratch my head sometimes why McGregor would drop him. There was obvious reasons, defense, but you're not picking him for his defense. You're picking him for what he did last week. The best defensive team since we started again, and he made us look amateur in some instances. Like
when the subtlety, the ball.
Well, the subtlety in his play was he's looking at a bloke and then he passes the two out, and it caught out Morris, it caught out Manu. These are guys that eat this shit up every day of the week, and you don't want to pick him. He was almost forced to pick him on the 4-panel membership that picks the team now under the new structure that they've got at the Dragons. He was outvoted 3-1. McGregor didn't want him, but he's your spark in the 20 zone. It's not Norman. It's not Hunt. So, good luck to the kid. He's
carving up
the coach. Well, there was chat 2 weeks ago that he wanted out to go to the Titans because at that stage, McGregor put a line through him. Flanagan said, mate, this guy can play. Have some faith. Trust him. They had Lomax at fullback in the offseason for whatever reason. I have no idea why you'd pick Lomax at fullback over Dufty, but
a player that's missing from the Dragons that has a lot of hype, and I'm going to lead it to Kamal because one of his favourite players in the 90s, his son, or the 2000s, I mean, Tristan Saylor. Do you think, why isn't he having a crack? Why is he not given a crack? Sorry, Kamal.
I don't watch enough of the Dragons to know who their wingers, why they aren't picked, but he looks like a solid player. I haven't watched him in the lower grades, so I don't know if he's overhyped on his dad's name, but he looks like a good player. Well, I'll definitely take a good winger at the Broncos.
He doesn't have the size of Dell, but he's actually got something different. He's got that speed, and he's a bit more gifted with the ball, like creativity. Eli, you don't think he gets a chance?
I don't know what the problem is as to why they're not picking him. I think at the back end of last season, when he played a few games, he showed that it was pretty promising, and I think he scored a try as well. So
he's got Saab ahead of him. Are you guys a fan of Ewan Aitken? I'm not.
There was a lot of perception about him. He was a strong defensive, Bo Scott style centre, but there was even talk of him being picked 2 years ago in Origin.
Origin, yeah, that's right.
Until someone, I think Latrell dusted him one night, and they kind of thought, well, maybe not, but he was a hair away. But even Charlie Saab, he was...
Jason Saab.
Jason Saab, sorry. He was... Charlie Saab's like a 90s Bulldogs player, sorry. He asked for 3 releases already, and he's been denied each time. And I actually didn't realise how big he was when they matched him up with Tupou. He's taller than Tupou. He's quite a big physique. He's, 20 years old? This kid's going to fill out, and he can't get a run. That was the first time he was put in. So, again, he was overruled. It was even split this time, 2-2, for getting him picked. But these guys all won out. Tristan Saylor, Saab, they all wanted a crack somewhere else. But, with McGregor getting overruled in these instances, these kids are getting the opportunities now.
Well, you know what, Sal, we're a place that he can go to. The Bulldogs. And speaking of the Bulldogs...
Give me a B, give me a U, give me a L.
And because you're a Bulldogs fan, you can't spell the rest of the word. Dogs and the Rabbitohs. Sal... how many fantasy points is Latrell going to get?
I'm going to call it. It's going to be 40 points to 6, Sleiman. Souths will... I love
So
Canberra.
no Hopper?
No Hopper. And clearly missed.
Crichton and Superstar Montoya's back.
Listen, I'm jumping on the Crichton bandwagon. I wasn't a fan of him last year. The last couple of rounds that he's played this year, he was suspended last week. But before that, he's breaking off tackles. He's actually providing something in attack. I'm on the Crichton bank. I'm buying him now while his stock stock price is low. So I'm joining the Crichton Island. Okay?
You've got a Crichton crush on the Crichton brothers.
We're not talking about the Panthers game, are we?
No.
I think it's past Sleeman's bedtime and he's focusing on another Crichton. Sleiman, I just feel Hopper's such a massive loss for that cohesion that we need just to at least keep us together. I'm really excited to see Luke Thompson. I reckon he'll come on the bench and I reckon he'll get a start. Off the bench. I don't think he'll play big minutes. I'm excited to see how he will play. I'm just wondering to see how he's feeling when he's seeing the Canterbury playing like this and he's sitting back going,
hey, what did I sign up to?
What have I done? How much have they signed him for? I don't know. But I'm excited to see him. He'll play. We won't do well. We'll get beat and and there'll be no talk about. Look, I can go on for hours.
Is the Pommy guy running in this week? Oh, I
His extended bench, Jamie. I think he just needs to get his match fitness, and then I think he'll go on the bench. I think Pay will get desperate and just put him on the bench for at least.
By all reports, this guy's a fitness machine. Like, just put him in. Why rush him over?
And I have a feeling they will, and eventually he'll start off Napa, and I think he'll be explosive. Hopefully he'll give Foran some space. And thank God I'm not saying Lachlan Lewis. Because he's, he can't rely on those bombs. But it'll give Foran some space, and it may improve us a little bit, but you know where I'm at. Give me an L, give me a DOGS.
Eli, South Sydney.
I've got dyslexia now. Thank you.
Eli, with South Sydney, Reynolds, former Alexandria Rover great. He's been limping around. I think he's playing with an injury. Do you think Bennett should rest him for this match?
Well, if it's against the Bulldogs, yeah, for sure.
He looks like he's carrying something.
So if he goes out, who comes in?
They've got Braden Burns on the bench.
Yeah, Mitchell played a bit of 5'8" before, so you can just put anyone at halfback and just have Cody Walker leading the team around.
Sleiman, they won't do it because it will create headlines, especially if Brisbane win, and they'll run all over him. But they will love doing that if he rests him. Something's wrong with him, and the media will just create this massive story about nothing.
Kamal, help me out. Help me out.
I'll stay out of that one.
Okay.
Bulldogs are going to get smashed.
So Bulldogs get smashed, and then the following week will be the coach leaves town match with the Bulldogs and the Broncos.
That has to be coach gets sacked. That has to be that game.
Next week's special, we're going to have Emil on here, and he's going to lose his shit. I see Mitchell. You want to ask some questions? What's that?
I see a Mitchell masterclass this week. He was a bit off last week.
I was saying a master's masterclass. I was like, what are you talking about?
He was definitely off. Like the forward pack wasn't leading and wasn't getting the yards, and they couldn't get the room. It's just you got to.
You look at the bench now. Liam Knight was this. He moved Cam Murray for Liam Knight. Now he's pushed him back to the bench. Ethan Lowe's a bit more dependable at second row. He's got a lot of issues where he's not getting the punch off the bench. You can't bring Cook into the game. Quality ball for Walker, quality ball for Mitchell. But I can't see anything but space on the fringes.
I think Alex Johnson will try to prove a point on Sunday because he's been asked to go.
I can't understand it.
It was quite interesting listening to Cook talk about him this afternoon, where they're under the impression that if they have a brilliant year and Old Mate pulls out top try scorer of the year, they might turn around and say, "Oh, well, you might actually can stay."
Well, they're saying they're not pushing him out because of form. They're pushing him out because they say they can't afford him.
Yeah, well, why would you pick Braden Burns ahead of him? It's probably the worst first grader I've seen since Karen Holland.
Oh, no. I actually like Braden Burns. I don't think he's been given a fair crack. He
had
bad hamstrings last year.
Jamie, stop picking on Canterbury.
Oh, sorry. Is that segment coming or?
That'll be next week.
Okay, next week.
The lollipop segment.
Well, Sal, that's it for the week.
No, I really enjoyed it, Kamal. And Eli, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we had a really, really good discussion. I really hope Brisbane do bounce back. And I must say, I'm a little bit jealous in terms of the what's the word, Sleiman, I'm looking for?
Scrutiny.
That spirit that Brisbane Broncos have. It's a great thing. It's a legacy and it's strong. And I'm so glad you guys could join us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
And Jamie, you spent probably 5 minutes and 35 seconds on the Roosters at the first start of the actual podcast.
Yeah, we're going to have to up that up next week. Yeah, that's enough.
But thanks for joining us. And Sleiman, I'll let you end the episode.
Well, thank you again. Next week, we'll probably talk about the Bulldogs and getting thumped again by the Bunnies. Maybe they can prove me wrong. I hope they can.
We'll get it. Yeah.
And let's be real. If I'm choosing players that impress me, I'm sure I'll choose Woodsy next week. Anyway, good night. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you next week.